So thank you very, very much, Marcy. Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, fellow Liberals. I have the immense pleasure to speak briefly this evening and then introduce our leader and our Prime Minister. Let me begin by thanking all of you for participating, for attending sessions at this convention, for sharing your ideas and your passion for Canada. I've been lucky enough to be attending conventions like these. Obviously, this is our first virtual one, but I've been lucky enough to be attending conventions like these since I was a young Liberal or a young political staffer, or obviously since I was lucky enough to join the National Caucus 20 years ago as a member of Parliament from New Brunswick. The virtual convention, it's not the same feeling as seeing old friends and being with one another physically, but obviously it's the safe and appropriate way for us to continue this important tradition of our party at this difficult moment in our country's history. Votre énergie, votre engagement,
your energy and your commitment and your ideas
jamais de nous inspirer et nous motiver. Et j'ai l'immense privilège de servir comme député. Et c'est grâce à des personnes comme vous, à des bénévoles qui bâtissent un mouvement politique inclusif, progressiste et innovateur. My friends, our party is strong, our party is united, it's inclusive, but it's also dedicated to serving all Canadians and every part of our country. As Liberals, we've always debated ideas, as we have in the past few days, about how to build a resilient, sustainable economy, about how to effectively tackle issues as critical as climate change, and how to put a price on pollution, all essential to building a growing and prosperous and sustainable economy. Nous utilisons ces congrès, non pas pour nier, par exemple, l'existence même des changements climatiques, comme font les conservateurs, mais pour discuter des politiques, pour mieux protéger les Canadiens pendant des moments si difficiles et pour renouveler notre engagement fondamental de lutter, par exemple, contre les changements climatiques et bâtir une économie durable pour tout le monde. Our work these past days as Liberals has been focused squarely on Canadians, on how to support and protect all Canadians during these difficult moments, and how to lead Canada into a strong, sustainable, inclusive economic recovery that leaves nobody behind and leaves no region of our country behind. I never cease to be inspired and motivated by conventions like these. Liberals stick together and are united at the difficult moments our country has faced in the past and will always continue to draw strength from one another. Cet esprit d'équipe, cette unité que nous voyons ces derniers jours lors de notre congrès, ce sont les mêmes sentiments qui guident notre caucus et notre Conseil des ministres. Mr. O'Toole and the Conservatives, well, they have a different focus than us. They spend their time going in circles wondering whether or not climate change is real, or how they can weaken the constitutional rights of women, ou comment ils peuvent prétendre qu'ils sont en faveur des langues officielles tout en n'ayant pas le courage de dire qu'ils vont nommer des juges bilingues à la Cour suprême du Canada. The Conservatives even pretend recently they don't want an election. But I remember an evening a few weeks ago where they voted 8 times no confidence in the government. Rather bizarre behavior from people who don't want an election. Mr. O'Toole seems like a leader who wants to play chicken, always hoping somebody else swerves. Well, those aren't the qualities Canadians expect of a real leader. Nos amis au Bloc, ils sont des experts, comme dit souvent notre ami Pablo Rodriguez, ils sont des experts à essayer de fabriquer des chicanes, à essayer de prétendre que le gouvernement du Canada ne peut pas travailler avec les provinces pour aider et appuyer les Canadiens, même dans les moments les plus difficiles. Notre premier ministre, Justin Trudeau, a démontré clairement lors des 29 dernières réunions avec tous les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires, et ça, juste depuis les 12 derniers mois. Il a démontré que notre gouvernement veut et peut travailler avec les gouvernements des provinces, y compris le gouvernement du Québec, dans l'intérêt des Canadiens. Il ne faut pas s'oublier que M. O'Toole, lui, faisait partie d'un gouvernement qui n'avait même pas le courage, pendant les 9 années qu'ils étaient au pouvoir, de rencontrer les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires. I have been enormously privileged in my lifetime to know our leader and our prime minister since we were literally kids. In fact, I've known him most of my life. Our mothers were friends for over 40 years, and our dads were friends for over 50 years. When I was 14 years old, the Prime Minister's mother and father, in what, with hindsight, appears to be a moment of some worrisome judgment, asked me to babysit the then 10-year-old Justin, 8-year-old Sasha, and 6-year-old Michelle. So I was the one who led our collective efforts to play telephone jokes on our friends' parents, or ring doorbells and then run away and hide behind the bushes in the neighborhood where we lived in Ottawa. And family weekends spent together skiing at Mont-Tremblant when we were kids cemented a friendship for me, which has been important and enduring for my entire life. Justin Trudeau est véritablement le meilleur ami qu'on pourrait jamais avoir. C'est une personne extrêmement sensible, d'une grande générosité et de compassion. Il est aussi très drôle et extrêmement généreux avec son temps. Il est ouvert aux idées des autres et à comment aller chercher le meilleur de tout le monde. Ces liens d'amitié depuis si longtemps m'ont permis de voir de très proche une personne extraordinaire qui est devenue notre chef et ensuite le premier ministre du Canada. Et depuis les 12 dernières années que nous sommes des collègues au caucus et à la Chambre des communes, j'ai vu la discipline, l'énergie, l'éthique de travail et la rigueur si impressionnant de celui qui guide notre pays depuis les 5 dernières années. The Prime Minister's character and values are what make him the remarkable leader that he is. His love for his amazing wife, Sophie, and their 3 fantastic children is literally inspiring, as is his generosity and his kindness to his friends and to his colleagues. As some of you may know, I went through some difficult health challenges these last 3 years. One night, in the first couple of weeks of the last election, in the fall of 2019, I was in an isolation room at the Hôpital Maisonneuve-Rosemont in Montreal. I just received a stem cell transplant. When the nursing station got a call that the Prime Minister was on his way from the airport to the hospital. The Prime Minister arrived at the end of a long day of campaigning. He came to the hospital and spent over 2 hours with me. We laughed, we told stories, we talked about the election. And that simple gesture, I think, shows the character of the person who leads our country. And it certainly motivated me for the long weeks I had ahead of myself in that isolation room at the hospital in Montreal. And I will never, ever forget that gesture of friendship that the Prime Minister repeats so many times over and over again. These basic values of decency and caring and generosity translate into the work the Prime Minister does every day for Canadians. He never takes his focus off what the government can do for Canadians and how to build a more prosperous, inclusive, fair, and generous country. Our leader, unlike the Conservatives and the Bloc, believes the national government has a key role in playing to have Canadians' backs, particularly at a moment as difficult as the one we're in now. He says to us over and over again in caucus, in cabinet meetings, that we will do what we have to for as long as we have to to protect Canadians, to protect their health, their safety, their economic well-being, and that of the Canadian economy as well. Alors, mes amis, c'est avec énormément de plaisir que je vous présente une courte vidéo et ensuite le Premier ministre prendra la parole. And now, Liberal friends, it's with enormous pride that I present a short video after which the Prime Minister will speak to us. Merci beaucoup.
One of my favorite Prime Ministers, Wilfrid Laurier, often talked about patriotism and the unifying power of common goals and aspirations. I've seen firsthand that there is so much more that unites us than divides us. We all want safer communities, a cleaner planet, and a good quality of life. We want this for ourselves, for our neighbors, and for our kids and grandkids. In the years ahead, our team will work hard to build on the progress made by the Canadians who came before us. We will champion Canada in all its diversity. We will give voice to the voiceless. And in every decision we make as your government, we will always put this country and its people first.
La pandémie a officiellement un an. Le 11 mars 2020 marquera toujours un avant et un après. Pour les familles et pour les proches, chaque décès a aussi un avant et un après. But even as COVID-19 took hold of our planet, even as this new word took over our lives, we found ourselves talking about other words, too. About words that weren't new at all. Sacrifice and solidarity, compassion and community. When the pandemic hit last year, these words, words that have defined Canadians for generations, were suddenly given new meaning. The fact is, there's never been a more important time to be involved. We've now hosted 9 different virtual weekends of action, the first of their kind, and made more than 1 million calls to check in with our neighbors and hear their ideas and priorities. En tant que gouvernement, notre priorité absolue est d'assurer la sécurité de tous. Peu importe qui vous êtes, où vous vivez, vous pouvez compter sur nous. Je compte à mon tour sur vous pour veiller à ce que, aujourd'hui comme demain, nous visions ce qu'il y a de mieux, parce que votre participation et votre soutien sont au cœur de notre succès. We've seen Canadians step up to be there for each other. We've watched this happen in big ways and small ways in every community across the country. And that coming together has given us the gift of perspective and the reminder of how important it is to have each other's backs in difficult times.
From March through October, the CERB alone supported 8.9 million Canadians. We have invested in healthcare, increased testing and tracing, and directly supported provinces and territories as they fight the virus. This has been a Team Canada effort.
Mais je veux être très clair avec les Canadiens. Notre objectif, c'est de faire en sorte que la PCU fonctionne pour vous. Notre gouvernement va continuer d'être là pour vous. There is nothing we won't do to keep you safe and to protect your health.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, Liberals. Dominic, first off, thank you for that introduction. My friend, I can't tell you how happy I am to have you on this team, especially with everything you've been through in the past few years. Even through those health challenges, we knew we could count on you. Your humor, your dedication, your political insights have been extraordinary, and it is so important to have you back at this table, especially in the thick of this crisis. Thank you for all that you do for Canadians, Dom, and for this Liberal movement. And to each of you who is tuning in this weekend, it's so good to have you join us at our 2021 convention. I know that well over half of you are first-time delegates. To everyone who is new,
welcome. Thanks for stepping up. And everyone else, it's great to be gathered with you all once again, even virtually. Que ce soit votre premier congrès ou non, les choses sont bien différentes cette année. Quand on était tous ensemble à Halifax en 2018, personne n'aurait pensé que notre prochain congrès serait un congrès virtuel. Peu importe d'où vous vous connectez, mes amis, je suis très content d'être ici avec vous. On va se le dire, l'année a été difficile. On connaît tous des familles qui ont perdu un être cher à cause du virus. On connaît tous quelqu'un qui n'a pas pu faire ses adieux à un grand-parent, un parent ou un ami. Within our own Liberal family, just this fall, we lost a true grit and former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable John Napier Turner. John was not just a good friend, a gifted athlete, and an exceptional politician. He was a remarkable leader who brought people together with his vision for a Canada brimming with hope for the future. And this year, maybe more than ever, I think we've all realized just how powerful that idea can be. Because forced isolation taught us new ways to connect with our friends and neighbors and be there for each other. A global crisis showed that local, individual actions really matter. And a faceless virus allowed us to better see the faces that have been there for us all. The brave nurses I spoke to last month at Victoria General in Winnipeg, the vaccine clinic staff I met in Montreal, and the frontline caregivers I Zoomed with at a retirement home in St. John. The communities celebrating holidays virtually, the PPE drives, the groceries left on porches for neighbors, and Liberals like you. In the last year, this team has truly stepped up. I think of Dr. Doug Ailfson, past and future Liberal MP, who is in the meantime caring for ICU patients during this pandemic. Or current MP Kamal Khera, who went back to help as a nurse at long-term care home during the first wave and is now administering vaccines. However you've helped, and I know a lot of you have connected with Canadians on phone calls and during weekends of action, you remind us that when we talk about hope and hard work, when we talk about sunny ways, we're talking about you. Ensemble, on a accompli beaucoup de choses depuis 5 ans, et juste dans la dernière année, on en a fait énormément. Mais le travail est loin d'être terminé. Pendant qu'on lutte pour en finir avec la pandémie, et on est dans les derniers mois, on l'espère, il faut se préparer pour ce qui vient après. Et nous, au Parti libéral, on sait qu'un gouvernement doit travailler pour tout le monde, pour tous les parents, tous les travailleurs, toutes les petites entreprises, tous les jeunes et toutes les personnes âgées. Recently, I spoke to Najma and Karim. They're parents and small business owners from Toronto who'd written to me about what it's like not just to raise a family during a pandemic, but to run a restaurant too. As Najma shared, it's really tough. Karim and Najma work hard. They put their heart and soul into building their restaurant from the ground up. They gave back to their community. In other words, they did everything right. They couldn't have planned for a global pandemic, and they shouldn't have to face one alone. When times got tougher than they could ever have expected, when the regular lunch crowd they rely on started working from home, they needed a government that would have their back, that listened to the real challenges they face, and then put in place real support. Because at the end of the day, that's what politics should be about. Real solutions to real problems. I know that's why I got into politics a dozen years ago, and I know that's why you've joined in too. So what does having people's backs look like? What does that mean for Najma and Karim? Well, it means that instead of worrying about the rent on their restaurant, they could count on the rent subsidy to bridge them through this crisis. It means that instead of laying people off because they couldn't make payroll, they were able to keep their employees on the job with the wage subsidy. And it means that instead of losing sleep over the cost of raising a family, they were able to use the Canada Child Benefit to buy school supplies like the tablet their kids need for classes from home. La dernière année a été difficile pour Najma et Karim, et pour bien d'autres familles et propriétaires de petites entreprises. Mais comme l'a dit Najma, tout soutien qui aide à traverser cette tempête est comme un rayon d'espoir à travers les nuages. Ce qu'on fait, on le fait pour des gens comme Karim et Najma. Et on va continuer d'être là pour tous les Canadiens. My friends, here's the thing. There are over 400,000 kids who were lifted out of poverty these past years with programs like the Canada Child Benefit. Well, when some of them are at risk of going hungry again because of this pandemic, that means there's still work to do. Across the country, there are seniors who have the secure retirement they deserve because we increased the guaranteed income supplement. But too many of them didn't get the care they needed in their seniors' home this spring, so there's still work to do. And to the Asian Canadians, Black Canadians, Indigenous peoples, and people living with disabilities who make this country stronger, to the LGBTQ2 communities and the racialized communities and the faith communities that make Canada richer, when anyone, anywhere faces racism, discrimination, or hatred, when anyone, anywhere feels the weight not just of this pandemic, but of inequity and injustice, there's still work to do. Mes amis, quand il y a des obstacles devant nous, que ce soit en lien avec la pandémie, l'ALENA ou tous les autres défis qu'on relève ensemble, notre équipe libérale est toujours claire par rapport aux valeurs qu'on défend. On est là pour les Canadiens. On est là pour la classe moyenne et ceux qui travaillent fort pour s'y joindre. Et on va toujours avoir un plan progressiste pour bâtir une économie forte et propre qui fonctionne pour tous. As Liberals, we know what real change means. Because what this team knows is that finding real solutions means addressing the real challenges people face. And that's something that Erin O'Toole's Conservative Party just can't quite grasp. How disconnected do you have to be to admit that you would have cut CERB, a lifeline for millions of people, during the worst economic crisis in a century? How disconnected do you have to be to call young people lazy when their summer jobs disappeared because of a global pandemic? How disconnected do you have to be to flirt with disinformation on public health and vaccines while a deadly virus takes loved ones, friends, and neighbors? And how disconnected do you have to be to refuse to admit climate change is real, even as people's basements flood and wildfires tear through communities? The problem for Erin O'Toole is that he's not interested in real solutions to real problems. In fact, he's already shown that he's willing to say different things to different people at different times if he thinks it'll help him get ahead. He says he wants to make communities safer, but to get the support of the gun lobby, he promised to make assault weapons legal again. He says he defends a woman's right to choose, but to win the Conservative Party leadership, he told his MPs they could introduce anti-choice laws. When I first ran for Liberal leader, I said that the debate over a woman's right to choose was finished. So we made sure you could only be a Liberal candidate if you agreed to protect that right. In 2015, we laid out our plan for a stronger middle class. Well, the first thing we did after that election was to cut taxes for the middle class by raising them on the wealthiest 1%. In 2019, we promised even stronger gun control. And last year, we banned assault weapons. And at the start of this crisis, we told Canadians we would have your back. So we rolled out CERB, we created the wage subsidy, we invested in schools, in healthcare, and in vaccines. In fact, on vaccines, while Erin O'Toole's Conservatives gleefully told Canadians it might be years until they got their shot, the reality is very different. Minister Anand and the Liberal team surpassed our promise of 6 million vaccines by the end of March, and by the end of last week, we got to 9.5 million doses. There are millions more vaccines on the way, and we're on track to meet our commitment that every Canadian who wants to will be fully vaccinated by the end of the summer. Dans notre équipe libérale, on n'attend pas pour passer de la parole à l'action. Quand vient le temps de mettre de l'avant des idées progressistes, on ne tourne pas autour du pot, on agit. Beaucoup de gens ne le savent pas, mais quand on compte tout le soutien fourni aux Canadiens depuis le début de la pandémie, c'est 8 $ sur 10 qui proviennent de notre gouvernement. En d'autres mots, 80 % de l'argent qui sert à aider les gens à traverser la crise est fourni par le gouvernement fédéral. L'année dernière, plus de 8 millions de personnes ont eu recours à de l'aide financière fédérale pour payer leur loyer et mettre de la nourriture sur la table. Et on a déployé les forces armées et la Croix-Rouge canadienne dans les CHSLD pour aider nos personnes âgées les plus vulnérables. Tout ça, ça a le mérite de mettre les choses très au clair. Pendant que le Bloc fait semblant d'être le seul parti qui peut parler au nom des Québécois, nous, on livre la marchandise pour les Québécois avec de l'aide directe pour les aînés, les entreprises, les familles et les travailleurs. Quand vient le temps de livrer pour les Québécois, ça prend des Québécois au gouvernement. Nous, les libéraux, on prend des mesures historiques pour promouvoir et protéger le français, pas seulement au Québec, mais partout à travers le Canada. Et on est le seul parti qui a un vrai plan pour s'attaquer au changement climatique et pour léguer un avenir plus propre et plus prospère à nos enfants. Dans notre plan, on interdit les plastiques à usage unique. On protège 25 % des océans et des terres du Canada pendant qu'on plante 2 milliards d'arbres et on atteint la cible de zéro émission nette d'ici 2050. On préfère choisir l'action au lieu de la division. On est toujours là pour les Québécois et pour tous les Canadiens et on va continuer d'avoir un message rassembleur au lieu de chercher la chicane. My friends, what it all comes down to is this. Which party has a real plan for the real problems in the real world? Some refuse to accept reality, all while offering falsehoods and division. Us? Well, this team is focused on solutions to the challenges we face, from health to jobs, from human rights to the environment. This team is focused on building back better for the middle class and people working hard to join it, while taking climate action to create good jobs and keep our economy growing for years to come. In other words, our team is focused on a better future for all Canadians. Les militants libéraux comme vous, vous avez toujours été là pour ouvrir la voie quand est venu le temps de réfléchir aux grands enjeux et d'agir. Ça a été le cas pour le droit égal au mariage et pour la légalisation du cannabis. Vous avez tenu votre bout, même quand le Parti conservateur s'attaquait à ces mesures. D'ailleurs, avec le Parti conservateur, on voit bien que plus ça change, plus c'est pareil. Pendant leur congrès, ils ont refusé de reconnaître que les changements climatiques sont réels. Contrairement à ça, vous, depuis le début, vous avez toujours continué de pousser pour faire avancer les choses. Au cours de la dernière année, vous avez demandé à plus d'1 million de Canadiens leurs idées pour bâtir un avenir meilleur. Et aujourd'hui, au plus grand congrès politique du Parti libéral de tous les temps, on intègre ces idées à notre plan. My friends, you've always been the heart of our liberal movement. on the big things that are still ahead, just like on everything we've already done. I know I can count on you to remind us that better is always possible. Because I know that you'll be there with your energy, your positivity, and above all, your conviction that together we can create an even better country to call home. The conversations we've had this weekend, the policy debates ongoing, the ideas we've shared, this is not just about policy. This is about people. It's about parents like Najma and Kareem. In Kareem's words, he came to Canada to build a good life for his kids and to give back to this country. That was what he dreamed of. And that's what so many parents dream of. It's about kids who can feel excited for their future and one day build a life for themselves in a clean, thriving economy. And it's about neighbors and friends who will each have a real and fair chance at success. Les prochains temps ne seront pas toujours faciles, mais malgré tout, on reste optimiste avec une vision positive pour l'avenir. On continue de travailler pour que les petites entreprises reviennent en force, pour que plus de familles puissent s'acheter une première maison et pour que nos communautés soient plus sécuritaires et plus en santé. Together, we get to choose a brighter future. Together, we get to grab hold of a once-in-a-generation moment to build the kind of tomorrow we all want to see. So reach out your hand to a neighbor who had a blue or orange or green lawn sign last time around. Phone up a friend who has a different perspective and maybe didn't vote for us in the past. Perhaps they're feeling disenchanted. Perhaps they're feeling left behind because they know climate change is real. Tell them about the plan that together this Liberal team is building with hope and hard work. And then, and this is important, listen to the things that they need us to do even better. In this past year, we've all been each other's neighbors. If anyone ever doubted it, COVID-19 has shown us that we're always stronger together. When we're there for each other, when we lean on each other, when we listen to each other. So the partisanship that's far too often the norm in Ottawa, we know that's not who Canadians are. We are people who get that we're in this together. People who understand that even when we're doing okay, if our neighbor is struggling, we're all worse off. Who understand that when all of our kids have a chance at success, when all of our entrepreneurs have an opportunity to thrive, when all of our communities have clean air and clean water, the future is brighter for all of us. The future is brighter for each of us. Ensemble, on traverse une crise sans précédent. Et ensemble, on se prépare à bâtir un avenir qui va être meilleur que tout ce qu'on a connu avant. Il y a de meilleurs jours qui nous attendent et je sais qu'ensemble, on va y arriver. Merci, mes chers amis. Thank you so much, dear friends.